Captain Sarah Brennan stepped off the Greyhound bus on a humid August afternoon, the kind of heat that made the asphalt shimmer and the air feel thick enough to chew. Clearwater, Texas looked exactly the same as it had 3 years ago. Same faded storefronts, same water tower with rust bleeding down its sides, same flags hanging limp in the still air, but Sarah wasn't the same. She adjusted the duffel bag on her shoulder and took her first step onto Main Street. Her right leg dragged just slightly, a limp, barely noticeable to someone who wasn't looking. But in a town like Clearwater, everyone was always looking. Mrs. Patterson was sweeping the sidewalk outside her bakery when she saw Sarah. The older woman's eyes went straight to that leg. That hesitation in Sarah's stride. Mrs. Patterson's smile faltered and she looked away quickly, like she'd seen something she shouldn't have. Sarah kept walking. The Legion Hall sat at the end of Main Street, a squat brick building where the veterans gathered every afternoon to play cards and talk about wars that felt more real to them than the present. Sarah's father had spent every Thursday there before he passed. She'd planned to walk right past it, but the door swung open. Well, look who's back. Tommy Briggs stepped out, beer belly straining against his VFW shirt. He'd served 2 years in the National Guard and never let anyone forget it. Behind him came Ray Sullivan and old Mike Cordero, both Vietnam vets who'd earned their right to the uniform they wore with pride. "Sarah Brennan," Tommy said, louder than necessary. "Heard you were coming home." "Tommy." Sarah nodded once and kept moving. "That's it? 3 years gone and that's all we get?" Tommy's voice carried that edge she remembered. That need to poke, to prod. "Heard you got yourself hurt over there." She stopped. Turned slowly. "I'm fine, Tommy. Don't look fine." He gestured at her leg with his beer bottle. "What happened? Trip over your own boots during a drill?" Ray Sullivan chuckled. Mike said nothing, but his eyes were measuring her. Judging. Sarah felt the heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face stone still. She'd learned that in places Tommy Briggs would never see. Places where showing emotion meant showing weakness, and weakness meant death. "Something like that," she said quietly. She turned and walked away, each step deliberate, each step reminding her of what she'd lost, what she'd given. Behind her, she heard Tommy say, 3 years in the Army and comes back limping. Probably couldn't cut it. Women never can. The words hit her back like stones, but Sarah didn't turn around. Her mother's house sat on Oakwood Lane, a small ranch-style home with peeling yellow paint and a garden that had seen better days. Sarah stood at the end of the driveway staring at the front door. She hadn't called ahead, hadn't written except for the mandatory letters every couple of months. How do you tell your mother what you've seen, what you've done, what you've lost? The door opened before Sarah reached it. "Baby girl." Linda Brennan stood in the doorway, thinner than Sarah remembered, grayer, but with the same warm eyes that had seen Sarah through skinned knees and high school heartbreak. "Hi, Mom." They held each other on that porch for a long time. Linda's hand smoothed Sarah's hair, traced her shoulders, as if making sure she was real. Whole. "You're limping," Linda whispered. "It's nothing." "Sarah." "Mom. Please. It's nothing." Linda pulled back, searched her daughter's face and saw something there that made her stop asking, some wall that hadn't been there before, some darkness in eyes that used to shine with light. "Come inside," Linda said softly. "I made your favorite." Pot roast. Dinner was quiet. Linda talked about the neighbors, about church, about Mrs. Chen's grandson who'd just made Eagle Scout. Sarah pushed pot roast around her plate and nodded in the right places. "People are asking about you," Linda said carefully. "Asking when you're going to come by, visit." "I'm not ready for that, Sarah. They care about you. They want to know why I'm limping." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. "They want to know what happened. They want a story they can tell their friends over coffee." Linda's face crumpled slightly. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Sarah stood up, her chair scraping hard against the linoleum. "I'm sorry. I need some air." She limped out to the back porch and sat on the steps where she used to sit as a kid, watching fireflies and dreaming of being bigger than this small town, bigger than the expectations that said girls like her should become teachers or nurses or wives. She'd become a soldier instead. And that choice had cost her everything. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through her old bedroom window. Posters of her high school track team still hung on the walls. Trophies lined the shelves. Sarah Brennan, state champion, 800 meters. Sarah Brennan, all-district cross-country. That girl could run like the wind. The woman staring back from the mirror could barely walk without pain. She dressed in jeans and a loose army t-shirt, pulled her dark hair into a tight bun and went downstairs. Her mother had already left for her shift at the hospital. A note on the counter said, "Groceries needed. List on fridge. Love you." Sarah pocketed the list and headed into town. The Piggly Wiggly was quiet on a Thursday morning. Sarah grabbed a cart and started down the aisles checking off items. Bread, milk, coffee. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Music played softly. She was reaching for cereal when she heard the voices. "That's her." "Linda's girl?" "Yeah, Sarah came back from the army." Two women stood at the end of the aisle. Sarah recognized them vaguely. PTA moms, church volunteers. The kind of women who ran this town through sheer force of gossip and casseroles. "Something happened to her over there," one whispered, not quietly enough. "Look at how she walks. Probably couldn't handle it." "You know how it is. They let women in those jobs now, but that doesn't mean they belong." Sarah's hand tightened on the shopping cart. "I heard she was in combat," the other woman said. "Can you imagine? A girl from Clearwater in actual combat? More likely she got hurt in training, trying to do something she wasn't built for." They moved on, their voices fading. Sarah stood frozen in the cereal aisle, her heart pounding. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, the store too small. She could feel the walls closing in, feel the weight of judgment pressing down. She abandoned the cart and walked out. That afternoon, Sarah sat in Veterans Park, a small green space with a memorial listing Clearwater's war dead. Her father's name was there, Staff Sergeant Robert Brennan, KEA Afghanistan 2015. She traced his name with her finger. "Miss your old man?" Sarah looked up. Mike Cordero stood there, the Vietnam vet from the Legion Hall. Up close, she could see the lines in his weathered face, the Purple Heart pin on his cap. "Every day," Sarah said. Mike nodded, sat down on the bench beside her, uninvited but not unwelcome. "He was proud of you. You know that? When you enlisted, he came to the hall and bought everyone around. Said his daughter was going to be a soldier, a real one." Sarah's throat tightened. "Tommy Briggs is an idiot," Mike said bluntly. "Always has been. Spent his whole guard service stateside and acts like he stormed Normandy." A small smile touched Sarah's lips. "But he's not the only one talking," Mike continued. "People see you limping. They make assumptions. This town, it's small. Small minds sometimes. I know. You going to tell them what happened?" Sarah looked at him, really looked, saw the understanding in his eyes, the recognition. "Soldier to soldier, I can't," she whispered. "Can't or won't. Both." Mike was quiet for a moment. Then he stood, tipped his cap. "Your daddy used to say that the hardest part of being a soldier isn't the fighting. It's coming home, carrying what you've seen, what you've done." He paused. "You don't owe these people anything, Sarah, but you owe yourself peace." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her father's name and the weight of secrets she couldn't share. That night, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The pain in her leg was worse when she was still. A deep, grinding ache that the doctors said would fade with time. They were wrong. Some pains don't fade. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Captain Brennan, this is General Marcus Hayes. I need to speak with you. It's important. We'll be in Clearwater next week. Please respond." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. General Hayes, the man who'd pinned the medal on her chest in that sterile hospital room in Germany. The man who'd held her hand when she woke up screaming. The man who knew the truth. Why was he coming here? Sarah deleted the message and turned off her phone. She wasn't ready. But ready or not, the truth was coming to Clearwater. And when it arrived, everything would change. The nightmares came every night. Sarah would wake in her childhood bedroom drenched in sweat, her mother's concerned face appearing in the doorway. Linda stopped asking questions after the third night. She'd just bring water, sit on the edge of the bed until Sarah's breathing steadied, then quietly leave. Sarah never told her what she saw in those dreams. The desert, the compound, the children's faces, the explosion. 3 days after she'd ignored General Hayes's text, Sarah forced herself to go to the Legion Hall, not because she wanted to, but because hiding felt too much like surrender, and Sarah Brennan didn't surrender. The hall was packed for Thursday night bingo. Veterans and their wives filled the folding tables, daubers in hand, faces lit by the glow of the number board. The smell of cheap beer and cheaper coffee filled the air. Sarah stood in the doorway, and the conversations died like dominoes falling. All eyes turned to her. Tommy Briggs sat at the bar, flanked by his usual crew. He raised his beer bottle in mock salute. Well, the captain graces us with her presence. Mike Cordero shot Tommy a look that could have cut steel. Knock it off, Briggs. What? I'm just saying hello. Tommy swiveled on his stool. Hey, Sarah, why don't you tell us all what really happened over there? How'd you get that limp? Run into a door? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. Sarah's jaw tightened. She could feel every eye on her. Judging, measuring, finding her wanting. I was doing my job, she said evenly. Your job? Tommy snorted. What job is that exactly? Sitting at a desk, filing paperwork? Because that's what they have women do over there, right? The real soldiers do the fighting. Tommy, that's enough. Mike stood up now, his voice hard. But Tommy was drunk and mean, a combination that made him unstoppable. No, I want to know. Because my cousin deployed 3 times. 3 times to Iraq. Came back fine. But little Sarah Brennan goes overseas and comes back broken. He leaned forward. Makes a man wonder if you were ever cut out for it in the first place. The room was dead silent. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. A dam she'd been holding back with everything she had. But she couldn't let it break, not here. Not in front of these people. You don't know anything, she said quietly, then tell us. Tommy spread his arms wide. Tell us what happened. Tell us why a soldier comes home limping. Tell us what you did that was so special. Sarah's hands were shaking now. Rage and grief and exhaustion all mixed together into something toxic. She wanted to scream at him. Wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to make him understand what she'd sacrificed. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she turned and walked out, her limp more pronounced now, her legs screaming with each step. Behind her, she heard Mike Cordero's voice, low and dangerous. You're a disgrace to that uniform, Briggs. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Sarah drove. She didn't know where she was going until she ended up at Lake Travis, 20 minutes outside town. The same lake where she'd learned to swim, where she'd had her first kiss, where she'd scattered her father's ashes. She parked and limped down to the water's edge, the evening sun turning everything gold and red. Her phone buzzed. Another text from General Hayes. Captain Brennan, I understand you need time, but there are things you should know. The DoD is reviewing your case. There are people who want to control the narrative. Please let me help. You earned more than silence. Sarah stared at the words. The DoD, Department of Defense, reviewing her case. Her stomach twisted. She knew what that meant. They were trying to bury it, trying to classify what happened, make it disappear along with the 12 bodies they'd pulled from that compound. 11 enemies, and 1 little girl. Sarah closed her eyes, and she was back there, back in the heat and the dust and the chaos, 18 months earlier. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Captain Sarah Brennan crouched behind the mud brick wall, her M4 rifle tight against her shoulder. The compound ahead was silent, too silent. Alpha team in position, she whispered into her radio. Bravo in position, came Lieutenant Chen's voice. Charlie ready, Sergeant Rodriguez confirmed. Sarah scanned the compound through her night vision. Intel said this was a Taliban weapons cache. 3 hostiles inside. Get in, secure the weapons, get out. Simple, except nothing was ever simple. On my mark, Sarah breathed. 3, 2, 1, go. They moved like shadows. Sarah's team had trained together for 8 months. They knew each other's movements like dancers knew choreography. Chen went left. Rodriguez right. Sarah straight up the middle. The door was unlocked. First red flag. Inside, the compound was dark. Sarah's night vision turned everything green and ghostly. She swept the first room. Empty. Second room. Empty. Captain. Rodriguez's voice crackled. You need to see this. Sarah moved to his position. A hallway. A door at the end, slightly ajar. Light spilling through. Second red flag. Sarah approached slowly, weapon raised. She could hear something now. A sound. Soft. rhythmic, crying. She pushed the door open. The room was lit by a single lantern. In the center, bound to chairs, were 6 children, ages ranging from maybe 5 to 12. 3 boys, 3 girls, their eyes wide with terror. What the hell? Chen whispered behind her. Sarah lowered her weapon, moved toward the children. It's okay. We're here to help. The floor beneath her feet felt wrong. Pressure plate. Sarah's mind screamed the word a split second before the world exploded. Sarah jerked back to the present, her heart hammering. She was at the lake. She was safe. She was home. But her leg throbbed with the memory of what that explosion had done. She'd thrown herself backward, shouting a warning. The blast had caught her right leg, shredding muscle and shattering bone. But she'd been lucky. Lieutenant Chen had been standing directly over the secondary device. He'd died instantly. Sarah had woken up 3 days later in a field hospital in Germany, her leg held together with pins and prayers. General Hayes had been there, had told her that after the explosion, despite her injuries, she'd crawled back into that room and pulled out 4 of the children. Rodriguez had gotten the other 2. The Taliban fighters had rigged the compound, used the children as bait. Sarah had saved 5 lives that night, but she'd lost Chen, lost her career, lost the use of her leg in any meaningful way, and she'd been sworn to secrecy. The mission was classified. The children were intelligence assets. The details could never be shared, so Sarah had come home a hero no one could acknowledge, a soldier no one could understand. Her phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call. General Hayes. Sarah stared at the screen. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, she answered. General. Captain Brennan. His voice was exactly as she remembered. Strong, steady, kind. Thank you for taking my call. Why are you coming to Clearwater? A pause. Because what they're doing to you isn't right. The DoD wants to bury your story, classify it so deep that no one will ever know what you did, what you sacrificed. Maybe that's better, is it? Hayes's voice softened. Sarah, you saved 5 children. You lost a good man. You nearly died yourself. And now you're home and people are calling you a failure. They're mocking you. They're saying you couldn't handle the job. Tears burned Sarah's eyes. What do you want me to say? I want you to let me tell the truth. I'm coming to Clearwater next week for a veterans ceremony. Let me tell them who you really are. What you really did. It's classified. I'm working on that. I have contacts. People who owe me favors. I can get the mission declassified. At least the basics. Enough to give you the recognition you've earned. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun sink below the lake. What if I don't want recognition? What if I just want to be left alone? Hayes sighed. Then I'll respect that. But Sarah, I've been a soldier for 32 years. I've seen a lot of good people broken by this job. The ones who survive are the ones who let themselves be seen. Let themselves be known, he paused. You don't have to carry this alone. After she hung up, Sarah sat by the lake until the stars came out. She thought about her father. About the pride in his eyes when she'd enlisted. About the last thing he'd said to her before his final deployment. Be brave, baby girl. But don't forget to be human too. She'd forgotten the second part. Maybe it was time to remember. The next morning, Sarah's mother was waiting at the kitchen table with coffee and a serious expression. We need to talk, Linda said. Sarah poured herself a cup and sat down. I got a call yesterday, Linda continued, from General Marcus Hayes. He said he's coming to town. Said he wants to speak about you at the veterans ceremony next Saturday. Sarah's hand tightened on her mug. He asked my permission. Linda said softly. As your next of kin. Said there are things about your service that could be made public. Things that would explain everything. Mom, I told him it was your choice, not mine. Linda reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. Baby, I don't know what happened over there. You won't tell me. You won't tell anyone. But I see it in your eyes. I see it in the way you wake up screaming. I see it in how you flinch when a car backfires. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. Whatever you did, whatever happened, you don't deserve to be treated like you're weak, like you failed. Linda's voice broke. You're my daughter. You're a soldier. And I'm proud of you. Whether I ever know the details or not, Sarah sobbed then, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Linda came around the table and held her. And for the first time since coming home, Sarah let herself break. Let herself be held. Let herself be human. On Friday, Sarah went back to the Legion Hall. It was early afternoon, quiet. Mike Cordero sat alone at the bar reading a newspaper. He looked up when Sarah walked in. Came back, he observed. Came back, Sarah confirmed. She sat down beside him. The bartender, a quiet man named Pete who'd served in Desert Storm, poured her a Coke without being asked. General Hayes is coming tomorrow, Sarah said. Mike nodded. Heard about that. Big ceremony, honoring local veterans. Lot of people planning to attend. He wants to tell them about me, about what happened. Mike set down his paper. You going to let him? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Part of me wants to keep it buried. Keep it classified. It's easier that way. Easier for who? For everyone. Mike smiled, but it was sad. Let me tell you something, Sarah. When I came back from Vietnam, people spit on me. Called me a baby killer. Told me I was a disgrace. For 40 years I carried that shame. I let them make me feel small. He tapped the bar with his finger. But I wasn't small. I was a soldier. I did my duty. And eventually, I had to decide whether I was going to let their ignorance define me, or whether I was going to stand tall and own my truth. What did you choose? You're looking at it. Mike gestured to his purple heart pin. Took me 30 years, but I chose truth. And I sleep better for it. Sarah nodded slowly. Whatever you decide, Mike said, know that some of us already see you, already know you're the real deal. Tommy Briggs and his ilk, they don't matter. They never did. That night Sarah texted General Hayes, tell them, 2 words, but they felt like jumping off a cliff. His response came immediately, you won't regret this. See you tomorrow. Proud of you, Captain. Sarah set down her phone and looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. At the scars, the limp, the shadows under her eyes. She saw a soldier, broken maybe, but not defeated. Never defeated. Tomorrow Clearwater would learn the truth, and Sarah Brennan would finally come home. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. The kind of Texas sky that stretched forever without a single cloud to break the endless blue. Sarah stood in front of her bedroom mirror, staring at her dress uniform. She hadn't worn it since the hospital in Germany. The jacket hung perfectly. The creases sharp, the brass polished to a mirror shine. Her mother had taken it to the dry cleaners, had made sure everything was perfect. But when Sarah looked at it, all she could see was the weight of what it represented, what it demanded, what it cost. Her hand shook as she buttoned the jacket. You look beautiful. Linda stood in the doorway, already dressed in a simple blue dress, her eyes red-rimmed but proud. I look like a fraud, Sarah whispered. Sarah Marie Brennan. Don't you dare. Linda crossed the room and took her daughter's face in her hands. You are many things, but a fraud isn't one of them. You hear me? Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Your father would be so proud that broke her. Sarah leaned into her mother's shoulder and cried, and Linda held her like she was 5 years old again, whispering the same words she'd whispered through every nightmare, every scraped knee, every broken heart. I've got you, baby. I've got you. The ceremony was being held at Veterans Park at 11 o'clock. By 10:30, the entire town had turned out. Folding chairs filled the grass, arranged in neat rows facing a temporary stage. American flags lined the walkway. A high school band played patriotic songs. Sarah arrived with her mother at 10:45, and the crowd's reaction was immediate. Whispers rippled through the assembled townspeople like wind through wheat. That's her. That's Sarah Brennan. Look, she's in uniform. Still limping, though. Sarah kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, military bearing. The limp was there, undeniable, but she didn't hide it, didn't rush. Each step was deliberate. Linda squeezed her hand once before they separated. Linda to sit with the families. Sarah to join the other veterans in the front row. Mike Cordero was there, his uniform from 50 years ago still fitting perfectly. He nodded to Sarah with respect. Several other veterans did the same. Men and women who'd served in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. They recognized one of their own. But Tommy Briggs was there too, 3 rows back, his VFW cap crooked, his face already red from morning drinking. He leaned over to the man next to him and said something that made them both laugh while looking at Sarah. She didn't react, couldn't afford to. At precisely 11 o'clock, Mayor Richard Chen walked to the podium. He was Lieutenant David Chen's father. Sarah's heart clenched when she saw him. He'd aged 10 years in the 18 months since his son's death. Their eyes met for just a moment, and something passed between them. Grief, understanding, shared loss. "Good morning, everyone," Mayor Chen said, his voice amplified by the microphone. "Thank you all for coming to our annual Veterans Day ceremony. Today we honor those who have served, those who have sacrificed, and those who continue to protect our freedoms." The crowd applauded politely. "We have a special guest with us today," Mayor Chen continued, "a man who needs no introduction, a decorated veteran with over 3 decades of service. Please welcome General Marcus Hayes." The applause was louder now as a tall, silver-haired man in full dress uniform walked to the stage. General Hayes was 62 but carried himself like a man half that age. Ramrod straight, clear-eyed, commanding. He scanned the crowd until his eyes found Sarah. He smiled. Just slightly. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Thank you, Mayor Chen. Thank you all for having me." General Hayes's voice was deep and carried easily across the park. "I'm here today to talk about sacrifice, about heroism, about the cost of freedom that we so often take for granted." The crowd settled in, expecting a standard speech about patriotism and duty. They had no idea what was coming. "We often think of heroes as people from the past," Hayes continued. "The greatest generation, the Vietnam vets, the men and women who stormed beaches and flew missions and stood in the gap. And they were heroes. They are heroes. I stand in awe of their service." Mike Cordero nodded. Other veterans murmured agreement. "But heroes aren't just in our history books. They're here now, living among us. And too often we don't recognize them. We don't see them. We don't honor them the way we should." Hayes paused, and his eyes found Sarah again. 18 months ago in Kandahar province, Afghanistan, a special operations team conducted a raid on a Taliban compound. The intelligence suggested it was a weapons cache. 3 enemy combatants, a straightforward mission. The crowd was silent now. This wasn't a standard speech anymore. Sarah felt every muscle in her body tense. But when the team entered the compound, they found something else. 6 children hostages used as bait. The compound was rigged with explosives, pressure plate IEDs designed to kill anyone who tried to rescue those kids. Gasps rippled through the audience. The device was triggered. The explosion was catastrophic. 1 soldier was killed instantly. Lieutenant David Chen. Mayor Chen's head dropped. His wife, sitting beside him, began to cry softly. The team leader was standing right next to Lieutenant Chen. The blast should have killed her too. But in the split second before detonation, she recognized the threat and threw herself backward while screaming a warning. Her right leg was shredded by shrapnel, bone shattered, muscle destroyed. The medics didn't think she'd ever walk again. Sarah's hands gripped the edge of her chair so hard her knuckles went white. But she did walk, because while she was lying there, bleeding, bone sticking through her skin, she heard the children screaming, and despite her injuries, despite the pain, despite the very real possibility of additional explosives, Captain Sarah Brennan crawled back into that room and pulled out 4 children. Her teammate Sergeant Rodriguez rescued the other 2. The entire park went silent. Every eye turned to Sarah. She sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. "Captain Brennan saved 5 lives that night," Hayes said, his voice thick with emotion. 5 children who are alive today because 1 soldier refused to leave them behind. Refused to give up. Refused to let her injuries stop her from doing what was right. Tommy Briggs sat 3 rows back, his mouth hanging open. For her actions, Captain Brennan was awarded the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, and the Army Commendation Medal for Valor. The mission was classified. She was forbidden from discussing it. Forbidden from defending herself when people questioned her service. Forbidden from explaining why she limps. Hayes stepped away from the podium and walked directly to Sarah. She struggled to stand, her legs screaming in protest, but she managed it. Stood at attention as the general approached. "Captain Sarah Brennan," Hayes said loudly officially, "on behalf of the United States Army and a grateful nation, I want to publicly recognize your heroism, your sacrifice, and your unwavering commitment to duty." He saluted her. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, saluted back. The crowd erupted. People rose to their feet, applauding, some crying. Linda Brennan sobbed openly, her hands over her mouth. Mike Cordero stood ramrod straight, saluting along with the other veterans. Mayor Chen walked to the stage, his face wet with tears, and embraced Sarah. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for trying to save my son. Thank you for saving those children." Sarah couldn't speak, could only hold this man who'd lost everything and hope he felt her grief, her sorrow, her regret that she couldn't save David too. The applause continued for a full minute. When it finally died down, General Hayes returned to the podium. "There's something else," he said. "Something you all need to understand. Captain Brennan came home to this town, to her friends and family, and she said nothing. She endured mockery, endured whispers and judgment. She let people assume she was weak, that she couldn't handle the job, that she'd failed somehow." His voice hardened now, edges of steel beneath the velvet. "And she did it with grace, with dignity, with honor, because that's what soldiers do. We carry our burdens in silence. We endure the judgment of people who will never understand what we've seen, what we've done, what we've sacrificed." Hayes looked directly at Tommy Briggs now. But sometimes, silence enables cruelty. Sometimes silence allows ignorance to flourish. Sometimes heroes need to be recognized, not for their own sake, but so the rest of us remember what true service looks like. Tommy had gone pale. Several people around him shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. Captain Brennan will never serve in combat again. Her injuries are too severe. At 28 years old, her military career is over. She'll live with chronic pain for the rest of her life. She'll always limp. She'll always carry the scars, visible and invisible, of what she endured. Hayes paused, let the weight of those words settle. "So when you see her walking down Main Street, when you see her limping, I want you to remember this. That limp is the price of 5 lives saved. That limp is the mark of a hero. That limp is something she earned in blood and courage and sacrifice." The general's voice dropped, became almost conversational. "And if anyone in this town ever questions her service again, if anyone ever mocks her or diminishes what she's done, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that while you were sleeping safely in your beds, Captain Sarah Brennan was pulling children out of a burning building with a shattered leg." Silence. Complete total silence. Then Mike Cordero stood. "Hoo-yah, Captain." One by one, every veteran in the park stood. Hoo-yah. The word rippled through them, a battle cry, a recognition, a blessing, and then the entire crowd was on its feet again, and the applause was deafening. The ceremony ended, but the crowd didn't disperse. People lined up to shake Sarah's hand, to thank her, to apologize. Mrs. Patterson from the bakery cried as she hugged Sarah. "I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know. I should have known." "It's okay," Sarah said over and over. It's okay, but it wasn't Tommy Briggs who approached her. It was his father, Walter Briggs, a Korean War veteran who walked with a cane. "Miss Brennan," Walter said formally, "my son is an idiot. Always has been. I want to apologize for the things he said." Sarah looked past him to where Tommy sat, alone now, his friends having quietly distanced themselves. He looked small, ashamed. "Apology accepted, Mr. Briggs." Walter nodded and walked away. Finally, the crowd thinned. Sarah stood with her mother and General Hayes near the memorial wall. "How did you get it declassified?" Sarah asked. Hayes smiled. "I called in every favor I had. Went all the way to the Secretary of Defense. Argued that you deserved recognition. That the families of those children deserved to know who saved them. That Lieutenant Chen's family deserved to know the full story of his heroism. And they agreed, eventually, with conditions. The children's identities remain classified. The exact location remains classified. But the basic facts, your actions, those are public record now." Sarah nodded slowly. "I don't feel like a hero." "Heroes never do," Hayes said gently. "That's what makes them heroes." Linda hugged the general. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me back my daughter. She was never lost, ma'am, just hidden. Now everyone can see what I've known all along. She's one of the finest soldiers I've ever served with." As the sun began to set, Sarah walked to her father's name on the memorial wall. She traced the letters one more time. "I hope I made you proud, Dad," she whispered. "He knows you did." Sarah turned. Mayor Chen stood behind her, his eyes red but clear. "David wrote home about you," he said. "About Captain Brennan, the toughest officer he'd ever served under. He said you were fair but firm, that you cared about your soldiers, that you'd never ask them to do anything you wouldn't do yourself." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. "He died doing his job." Chen continued. serving with honor. And you honored him by saving those children. By finishing the mission even when it cost you everything. I'm so sorry I couldn't save him too. Chen's voice broke. You tried. That's all any parent can ask. You tried and you nearly died trying. He took her hand. Thank you, Captain. Thank you for being the kind of leader my son was proud to follow. They stood together in silence. Two people bound by grief and honor and loss. Finally, Chen squeezed her hand and walked away. Sarah stood alone as darkness fell over Veterans Park. But she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. Finally, fully seen. The truth was out now, and it had set her free. Sunday morning came quiet and gentle, the kind of peace that settles over small towns after big events. Sarah woke without nightmares for the first time in 18 months. The pain in her leg was still there, dull and constant, but somehow it felt different now, like a scar instead of a wound. She dressed in jeans and a simple shirt and went downstairs. Her mother was already in the kitchen making pancakes and humming softly to herself. Morning, baby girl. Morning, Mom. They ate breakfast together, comfortable silence between them. Through the window, Sarah could see neighbors walking their dogs, kids riding bikes, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing. But something had shifted. Sarah could feel it in the air. After breakfast, she told her mother she needed to take a walk. Linda smiled, kissed her forehead, and let her go without question. Sarah headed toward Main Street, her limp as pronounced as ever, but her head held high. The morning sun warmed her face. The town looked different somehow, brighter, more welcoming, or maybe she was just seeing it differently. As she walked past the bakery, Mrs. Patterson knocked on the window and waved. Actually waved with a genuine smile. Sarah waved back. 3 doors down, old Mr. Henderson was opening his hardware store. He saw Sarah and straightened up, brought his hand to his forehead in a crisp salute. Sarah stopped, surprised, then returned it. Thank you for your service, Captain, he called out. Real service. Thank you, sir. She continued walking, and everywhere she went it was the same. People nodded, smiled, some stopped to shake her hand. A teenage girl working at the coffee shop refused to let her pay, sliding her latte across the counter with shy admiration in her eyes. My brother's in the army, the girl said quietly, stationed in Germany. What you did, it helps me sleep at night, knowing there are people like you watching out for people like him. Sarah's throat tightened. Tell him thank you for his service. I will. And Captain, thank you for yours. Sarah sat on a bench outside the coffee shop, sipping her latte and watching Clearwater wake up. She thought about the girl whose brother was overseas, about the parents who sent their children into harm's way and prayed they'd come home. She thought about Mayor Chen, who'd never get that prayer answered. Her phone buzzed. A text from General Hayes. How are you holding up? Sarah smiled and typed back, better. Thank you for everything. You earned it. Every word was true. Stay strong, Captain. She was about to put her phone away when another message came through. An unknown number. Captain Brennan, my name is Amina. General Hayes gave me your contact. I was one of the children you saved. I am in America now, living with family in California. I wanted to say thank you. You gave me a future. I will never forget. Sarah stared at the message, tears blurring the words. She read it 3 times, then a 4th, her heart swelling with something she couldn't quite name. Purpose. Meaning. Worth. She typed back with shaking hands. Amina, you don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're safe. I'm glad you have a future. Live it fully. Live it well, the response came quickly. I will. Because of you, I will. Sarah sat on that bench and cried. But these weren't tears of pain or grief. These were tears of release, of healing, of a burden finally shared and somehow made lighter. By noon, Sarah found herself walking toward the Legion Hall. It was Sunday, typically quiet, but she could see through the windows that it was full. A sign on the door read, Special meeting, all veterans welcome. She hesitated at the entrance. The door swung open. Mike Cordero stood there, a slight smile on his weathered face. Wondered when you'd show up, he said. Come on in. Sarah stepped inside and stopped short. The hall was packed. Every veteran in Clearwater seemed to be there. Maybe 30 or 40 people spanning generations from Korea to Afghanistan. They'd set up chairs in a circle. Coffee and donuts sat on tables along the wall, and they were all looking at her. We called an emergency meeting of the Clearwater Veterans Association, Mike announced. We have some business to discuss. Sarah stood frozen, uncertain. Sit down, Captain, Mike said gently, gesturing to an empty chair in the circle. She sat. Mike remained standing. For those who don't know, which is probably nobody at this point, this is Captain Sarah Brennan. As of yesterday, we all learned what she did in Afghanistan. What she sacrificed. He paused. We also learned how she was treated when she came home. Uncomfortable shifting in some of the chairs. That's on us, Mike continued bluntly. On this town. On this organization. We should have done better. We should have seen her. Recognized her. Defended her. Walter Briggs, Tommy's father, stood up. Mike's right. My son said things. Did things. And I should have stopped him. Should have called him out. He looked directly at Sarah. I was a soldier once. I know what it's like to come home and have people not understand. I should have known better. I'm sorry, Captain. Mr. Briggs, you don't need to— Yes, I do. His voice was firm. And Tommy does too. He's not here because I told him he's not welcome at the hall until he makes this right with you. Man to man, soldier to soldier. Sarah nodded slowly, unsure what to say. A woman stood up. Maria Santos, Desert Storm veteran in her 50s. I want to say something too. I served in a different time, but I faced some of the same crap. People questioned whether women belonged in uniform. Whether we could handle it. Whether we were really soldiers. She looked at Sarah with fierce pride. You proved them all wrong. You showed what we've been saying for decades. Women are warriors. Women are heroes. Women belong. Damn right, said another woman, younger, Iraq War veteran. One by one, other veterans stood and spoke. They apologized. They praised. They welcomed her into their ranks not as a token or an outsider, but as an equal, as a warrior who'd earned her place. Finally, Mike spoke again. There's one more thing. The Clearwater Veterans Association has a tradition. When a veteran demonstrates exceptional service, exceptional heroism, we make them an honorary lifetime member. We grant them a permanent seat at this table. He pulled out a plaque. Sarah could see her name already engraved on it, along with the words, Silver Star recipient, combat veteran, American hero. Captain Sarah Brennan, Mike said formally. It would be our honor if you'd accept. Sarah stood on shaking legs, accepted the plaque, and looked around the circle at these men and women who'd walked the same path she had, who understood the weight she carried. Thank you, she managed. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Veterans came up one by one to shake her hand, to hug her, to welcome her home properly this time. When the meeting broke up an hour later, Sarah stayed behind to help clean up. Mike worked beside her, stacking chairs. You know what the difference is between you and Tommy Briggs? Mike asked conversationally. What's that? You don't need to talk about what you've done to feel important. You just do the work. That's real service, he paused. Your father was like that too. Quiet professional. Never bragged. Just showed up and did what needed doing. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile in a long time. He'd have liked you. I liked him. And I like you, Captain. This town's better with you in it. Monday morning, Sarah woke with purpose for the first time since coming home. She got dressed, ate breakfast with her mother, and drove to the county administration building. At the Veterans Services office, she found a harried woman in her 40s surrounded by stacks of paperwork. Can I help you? My name is Sarah Brennan. I'm a veteran and I want to volunteer. The woman, whose nameplate read Jennifer Walsh, looked up with surprise. You're the captain everyone's talking about. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. I'm just a veteran looking to help other veterans. Jennifer's face softened. We desperately need help. We're understaffed, overwhelmed, and we've got vets falling through the cracks every day. VA claims that go nowhere. Benefits applications that never get filed. Housing issues. Medical issues. It's a mess. Then let me help you fix it. And just like that, Sarah had a mission again. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah threw herself into the work. She learned the VA system inside and out. She made calls, filed paperwork, advocated for veterans who couldn't advocate for themselves. She used her rank and her connections, including General Hayes, to cut through red tape. She got a Korean war vet the benefits he'd been denied for 20 years. She helped a homeless Iraq veteran get housing and medical care. She connected a struggling Afghanistan vet with mental health services that literally saved his life, and slowly, quietly, Sarah began to heal. The work gave her purpose. Helping others gave her meaning. And the gratitude of the veterans she served gave her something she hadn't realized she'd lost. Hope. 3 weeks after the ceremony, Sarah was working at the Veterans Services office when the door opened. Tommy Briggs walked in. Sarah looked up from her desk, her body tensing automatically. Tommy looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed like he hadn't slept in days. He clutched his VFW cap in both hands, twisting it nervously. "Captain Brennan," he said quietly. Can we talk?" Sarah studied him for a long moment, then gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit down, Tommy." He sat, wouldn't meet her eyes. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Tommy spoke. "I was an ass. Worse than an ass. I was cruel and ignorant and—" He swallowed hard. "I was jealous." That surprised Sarah. "Jealous? You were the real thing. A real soldier. Real combat. Real heroism. And I did 2 years in the Guard, never deployed. Never saw action. Never did anything that mattered." His voice broke. "So when you came home limping, I told myself it meant you were weak. That you'd failed. Because if you could fail, then maybe I wasn't such a failure myself." Sarah said nothing, just listened. "But I was wrong. You didn't fail. You're a goddamn hero. And Tommy's hands shook. "I'm nothing. I'm a drunk who lives in his father's basement and pretends to be something I'm not. Tommy. My dad kicked me out of the house," Tommy continued, his voice hollow. "Said I disgraced our family. Disgraced the uniform. He said I'm not welcome back until I make things right with you. Until I become the kind of man who deserves to wear that VFW cap." Tears ran down his face now. "I don't know how to make this right, Captain. I don't know how to fix what I broke. But I'm asking. I'm begging. Tell me how." Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying this broken man in front of her. She could hold on to her anger. Could let him twist in the wind. Could make him suffer the way he'd made her suffer. But what would that accomplish? "You want to make it right?" Sarah asked quietly. Tommy nodded desperately. "Then get help. You've got a drinking problem. Get into AA, get sober." "Okay, yes, I will." "And then volunteer. Here at this office. Help me help veterans. Do the work, real work. Not sitting in a bar telling stories. Actual service." Tommy looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "You'd let me do that?" "On one condition. Anything." Sarah leaned forward. "You don't do it for forgiveness. You don't do it to impress your father or to get back into his house. You do it because it's right. Because veterans deserve better. Because service doesn't end when you take off the uniform." Tommy nodded, tears streaming freely now. "I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about you, Tommy. It's about them. The veterans who are struggling. Who need help. Who need someone to give a damn. I get it. I do. I want to help. I want to be better." Sarah studied him for another long moment, then extended her hand. "Then welcome to the team. First thing you do is get yourself into treatment. Jennifer has a list of programs. You get sober, you come back, and we'll put you to work." Tommy took her hand, shaking it like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. "Thank you, Captain." "Thank you for the second chance. Don't thank me. Just do the work." After Tommy left, Jennifer emerged from the back office where she'd been listening. "That was generous," she said. Sarah shrugged. "People deserve second chances. My dad used to say that everybody's fighting a battle we know nothing about. Tommy's got his demons. Maybe helping others will help him slay them." Jennifer smiled. "You're going to do a lot of good here, Captain. I'm going to try." 6 months later, Sarah stood in Veterans Park once again. But this time it was different. The park had been expanded thanks to a grant Sarah had helped secure. There were new benches, new trees, a memorial garden where families could sit and remember, and a new statue. The dedication ceremony was smaller than the one in November. Just family, friends, and veterans. Mayor Chen stood at the podium, his voice stronger now, steadier. "This statue honors all the veterans of Clearwater who served with valor, but it was inspired by one person in particular, someone who showed us what true heroism looks like." The statue was unveiled. It showed a soldier, gender neutral, reaching down to help someone up. On the base were inscribed the words, "Service, Sacrifice, Strength." Sarah stood beside her mother, tears in her eyes. General Hayes had come back for the dedication. He stood in his dress uniform, pride evident on his face. Tommy Briggs was there too, 90 days sober, wearing a volunteer's badge from the Veterans Services Office. He'd proven himself over the past months, working quietly and diligently, helping veterans navigate the system. He'd never missed a day, never complained, never asked for recognition. He was becoming the man his father hoped he could be. After the ceremony, as people mingled and talked, a young girl approached Sarah. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. "Are you Captain Brennan?" the girl asked. "I am. My daddy says you're a hero. He says you saved people." Sarah knelt down to the girl's level despite the pain it caused her leg. "What's your name?" "Emma. My daddy's deploying to Afghanistan next month. He's scared, but he says knowing there are soldiers like you makes him feel better." Sarah's heart clenched. "Your daddy's very brave. And when he comes home, you tell him to come see me. I'll make sure he gets all the help and support he needs." "Okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Okay, and Captain? Thank you for being brave first. So my daddy knows how." The girl ran off back to her parents. Sarah stood slowly, her leg protesting, and watched her go. Linda appeared at her shoulder. "You okay, baby?" "Yeah, Mom, I'm okay. I'm really okay." And for the first time since the explosion, since Chen's death, since coming home broken and lost, Sarah meant it. She was okay. Not healed. Maybe never fully healed. The leg would always hurt. The nightmares would probably never completely stop. The scars, visible and invisible, were permanent. But she was okay, because she'd found her purpose again. Found her place. Found her peace. That evening, Sarah sat on her back porch watching the sun set over Clearwater. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Amina, the girl she'd saved. The message included a photo. Amina in a cap and gown, graduating high school. Her smile was radiant. Starting college in the fall, the message read, studying medicine. Going to be a doctor. Going to save lives like you saved mine. Thank you, Captain. Thank you for my future. Sarah stared at the photo, at this beautiful young woman who'd survived hell and chosen to turn her trauma into purpose, just like Sarah was doing. She texted back, "I'm so proud of you. Go change the world." As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, Sarah thought about the journey she'd been on. From that compound in Afghanistan to this porch in Texas, from broken and lost to healing and found. She thought about Lieutenant Chen, gone but not forgotten. She thought about the 5 children who lived because she'd refused to give up. She thought about her father and hoped he was watching, proud of the woman she'd become. And she thought about tomorrow, about the veterans waiting for her help, about the work still to be done, about the lives still to be changed. Sarah Brennan had come home not to hide, not to disappear, but to serve, because that's what soldiers do. Even when the war is over, the mission continues, and Sarah's mission had just begun. Epilogue 2 years later. Sarah Brennan stood in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon, surrounded by military brass and government officials. She'd been invited to speak at a conference on veteran reintegration and support services. Her work in Clearwater had gained national attention. The program she'd built had become a model for rural veteran services across the country. She still limped. Always would. But now when people saw her walking down a hallway, they didn't see weakness. They saw a warrior who'd earned every step. Captain Brennan, a young female soldier, approached her after the speech. "I just wanted to say thank you. I'm deploying to Afghanistan next month, first combat deployment, and I'm terrified. But hearing your story, knowing what you did, what you survived, it helps." Sarah took the young woman's hands in hers. "What's your name, soldier?" "Private First Class Rebecca Morrison, ma'am." "Private Morrison, listen to me. You're going to be scared. That's normal. That's human. But you're also going to be brave. You're going to do your job, and when you come home, no matter what happens over there, you're going to have people who understand, who support you, who see you." The young soldier's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, ma'am." "No, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for being part of the next generation of warriors." After the conference, Sarah stood outside the Pentagon, looking up at the building that represented everything she'd fought for, everything she'd sacrificed for. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Hi, Mom. Hi, baby girl. How'd the speech go?" "It went well. Really well. I'm so proud of you. Your father would be too." Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "I know, Mom, I know. When are you coming home?" Tomorrow afternoon, and Mom, I really mean that now. Home. Clearwater is home. It always was, baby. You just had to find your way back to it. After they hung up, Sarah stood for a moment longer, feeling the weight of her journey, the pain of her past, and the promise of her future. She'd been broken. She'd been mocked. She'd been dismissed and doubted and degraded. But she'd survived. And more than that, she'd thrived. Because Captain Sarah Brennan understood something that took most people a lifetime to learn. Strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. Every single time, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how impossible it seems. You get back up and you keep walking even if you limp, especially if you limp. Because that limp tells a story of sacrifice, story of courage, a story of survival, and Sarah Brennan's story was far from over. It was just beginning.